You finish a set of squats, glance at your phone, and 45 seconds later, you're not sure if that's enough rest or if you're supposed to wait longer. Most lifters follow some vague rule, a minute for this, 2 minutes for that, without really knowing where the number came from. Today, we're breaking down what the actual research says about rest between sets, and the advice has genuinely shifted in the last few years away from the old one-size-fits-all answer. Let's start with why rest between sets matters at all. Every hard set you lift draws on a fuel system in your muscles called APPR, phosphocreatine, which powers short, intense efforts like a heavy squat. That fuel depletes fast, often within 10 to 15 seconds of hard effort, and it takes roughly 3 minutes to mostly refill. Rest between sets is basically the window where that refill happens. Cut it short, and you show up to your next set with less available fuel, which shows up as fewer reps, lighter weight that feels heavier, or worse bar speed. This isn't just a comfort preference. It's a direct input into how much total work you can do in a workout, which is one of the biggest drivers of both strength and muscle growth over time. So, how long should you actually rest? It depends entirely on what you're training for that day. If you're training for pure strength, low reps, heavy weight, 3 to 5 rep sets of squats, deadlifts, or bench press, rest 3 to 5 minutes between sets. Strength and power work relies almost entirely on that APPCR system, and shortchanging the refill period directly caps the weight you can move. This is where cutting rest short backfires the most visibly. A lifter chasing a new squat max who only rests 90 seconds is almost always leaving weight on the bar simply because their body hasn't had time to restore the energy needed to express that strength. For muscle growth specifically, this is where the research has actually moved the needle on old advice. For years, the standard gym wisdom was 60 to 90 seconds of rest for hypertrophy, based on the idea that shorter rest creates more metabolic stress, the pump, which was assumed to be the main driver of muscle growth. But a frequently cited 2016 study put this to a direct test. 21. Trained men followed identical 8-week training programs, 3 full-body workouts a week, 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps across 7 exercises, with the only difference being rest length. One group rested 1 minute between sets, the other rested 3 minutes. The 3-minute group ended up with significantly greater muscle thickness in the quads and triceps, and significantly bigger strength gains on squat and bench press, despite doing the exact same sets and reps on paper. The likely explanation is simple. The 3-minute group could maintain heavier loads and more total reps across all 3 sets, since they weren't showing up 2 sets 2 and 3 still fatigued from set 1. Over 8 weeks, that difference in total training volume added up to a measurable difference in muscle growth. Now, if your goal leans more toward general conditioning or a fat loss focused circuit style workout, shorter rest of 30 to 45 seconds is actually the better choice. Here the goal isn't maximizing load on your next set. It's keeping your heart rate elevated and accumulating training density in a shorter window. This is also where the old short rest burns more fat idea has the most truth to it, though even here the effect is pretty modest. Short rest circuits do raise your heart rate more, but the actual extra calories burned tend to be a small slice of your total daily energy expenditure, not a dramatic fat loss shortcut on their own. Here's a mistake almost everyone makes: using one flat rest time for an entire workout, no matter what you're actually lifting. A heavy set of deadlifts recruits huge amounts of muscle mass and taxes your nervous system in a way a set of bicep curls simply doesn't. Big compound lifts genuinely need more recovery time, generally 2 to 5 minutes, while smaller isolation exercises recover fast enough that 60 to 90 seconds is usually plenty. Applying a flat 2 minutes for everything rule typically means under-resting your biggest lifts, exactly the ones that benefit most from a full recovery window, while over-resting your smaller accessory movements and stretching out your total gym time for no reason. Is it ever bad to rest too long? Within a reasonable range, no. And honestly, the far more common mistake is resting too little, not too much. That said, resting 10 or 15 minutes scrolling on your phone mostly just wastes time and can let your body cool down enough that your next set feels stiffer than it should. A practical target for most lifters is to 2-3 minutes on compound lifts and 60 to 90 seconds on isolation work, leaning toward the longer end on your heaviest, hardest sets. So how do you actually time this without staring at a stopwatch the whole session? A phone timer or smartwatch works fine for your first few weeks on a new program, mainly to build a feel for what 90 seconds versus 3 minutes actually feels like, since most people badly underestimate how long they're resting when left to guess. Once you've calibrated that internal sense, a simpler cue works just as well. Rest until your breathing has returned close to normal and you feel like you could hit your target reps again with good form. not until you feel 100% fresh, which usually takes longer than necessary. One more thing worth knowing. Your rest needs actually change over the course of a single workout, not just between different exercises. Your first working set of squats, when you're fresh, might genuinely need the full 3 minutes after. But by your third or fourth exercise, once general fatigue has set in and the loads have naturally come down, you can often get away with a bit less rest without any real drop in performance. Rigidly sticking to one number from the first set of your workout to the last ignores how fatigue actually accumulates. It's also worth separating out where you are in your training experience. Beginners typically don't need the full 3 to 5 minutes even on heavy compound lifts, since the weights are still relatively light relative to their eventual strength, and their nervous system recovers faster between sets. As you get stronger and the loads climb, you'll usually notice you naturally want more rest to hit the same reps, which is completely normal and not something to fight against. Let's run through the most common mistakes one more time. Resting the same amount for every single exercise regardless of how demanding it actually is. Cutting rest short specifically to chase a pump, when the research suggests total volume matters more than metabolic stress for most lifters. Resting so long between sets that your muscles actually cool down. Ignoring how you actually feel, and forcing the next set on a rigid timer even when you're still breathing hard. And assuming shorter rest is automatically better for fat loss, when the calorie difference is modest and it often costs you meaningful strength and muscle over time. Here's the bottom line. Rest between sets isn't a one-size-fits-all number, and the old default of 60 to 90 seconds for everything doesn't hold up well against more recent research. For strength and power, rest 3 to 5 minutes. For muscle growth on compound lifts, current evidence points toward 2 to 3 minutes outperforming shorter rest for most trained lifters, while isolation exercises still do fine with 60 to 90 seconds. For muscular endurance or fat loss circuits, 30 to 45 seconds fits the goal better. Match your rest to what you're actually training for that set, not a single rule for the whole workout, and you'll get a lot more out of the sets you're already doing. If this helped you dial in your own rest periods, the full article has the complete research breakdown, including the exact study details, linked right below this video. Subscribe if you want more videos like this every week. No fluff, just what the actual research says.